once you do that, I mean, the hardest things in life, you kind of can dig deep into the trenches of your spirit to overcome, right? Whether that's loss, whether that's adversity you feel through business or anything like that, regular stuff that would give me anxiety, I have now trained myself in different forms of adversity to be equipped to deal with these things so that I can be that better husband, I can be a better son, I can be a better coach and leader for my team and leader for the tribe here at the nation.
Welcome to Kula, the community for South Asian health. Kula is a Sanskrit word for community, which is what this podcast is all about, bringing together a community of the leading South Asian health experts to talk all things health, fitness, and nutrition. Poor dietary habits and lack of exercise in our community are leading to increased rates of obesity, diabetes, heart disease, and cancer, a negative trend that requires radical change. I'm your host, Krish Nandkeshwar, a health and fitness enthusiast, competitor, and coach motivated to educate and inspire the South Asian community to live healthier and combat disease. I interviewed the top South Asian health experts, including doctors, athletes, fitness coaches, and nutritionists, to share their expertise and educate us all on how we can live healthier that is unique to our South Asian identities. Thank you all for listening, and welcome to all the new listeners. So far, we have received very positive feedback, and I'm really excited to share the future episodes with you all. If you like what you hear, please like, subscribe, share, and spread the word. All right, everyone, welcome back to the pod. We have had some great episodes, and I'm super excited for this next one. I have a guest, Binaypal Ben Ghuman, based out of Surrey, BC, who's the founder of Fit Nation BC, an athlete development and rehab center gym in Surrey, BC. And he has a fascinating story of finding his path from working in banks to just, hey, this is not the life for me, and changing that up to go become a personal trainer, a gym owner, an entrepreneur, and even an athlete as a distance runner. And he's on a mission to enhance your mental and physical performance. Ben, how you doing, man? Thanks for being on.
Good, man. Good, man. Thank you. That was quite the intro. Damn, I feel like a wrestler.
Yeah,
That's
did I
amazing.
miss anything?
No, I think you nailed it, man. That's crazy. Crazy. It's weird hearing that back because I'm just in the thick of it every day. And when you hear it back, you're just like, damn, okay, we're on this mission.
Yeah, I mean, we're gonna dive into all of it, and I really want to start on your story. But before that, like, what's your cultural background? Where you're from? Where's your family from? Tell me a little bit about that.
Absolutely. So I'm Punjabi Sikh, Canadian. So I like to tell people born and raised in Surrey, BC, by way of Punjab. So my mom was born in Chandigarh, India, immigrated here after she got married at a really young age. I think she was 18. My dad actually went to high school out here in Canada in Surrey, and growing up in the I guess late 70s, early 80s for him. It was a crazy time, so that kind of took over his life. But yeah, I'm Punjabi Sikh, Canadian, and born and raised in Surrey, BC.
Love it. We have a lot of Punjabis out there, and I have some family out
Mm-hmm.
there too, so it's always good to
Oh,
connect
you do?
with more. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. More
absolutely.
so, like, yeah,
Sweet.
Vancouver side too.
Mm-hmm.
What's your mission? What's your overall goal in a high level snippet right now in terms of fitness and health?
I think it comes down to the same mission that I have with my organization, Fit Nation. It's to enhance people's mind, body, and spirit, and I do that through various means, whether that's through the physical training that I do, the example I set in the training that I do on my own, and kind of like I like to call it like the weight training therapy that I have with my clients,
Mm,
where when you're training with them, you kind of really get to know about what's going on in their life, and you kind of have a way to help them navigate through their own
yeah.
unique story that they're going through. But ultimately, if I boil it down, I think it comes down to just enhancing people's mind, body, and spirit, and then exposing them to their highest potential.
I love that. So how do we get there? Tell us a story that you've told me, offline, but tell us a story of your whole day job and realizing, wait, this is not the right thing for me, and I need to switch everything up, because I think this is really powerful for many people out there to see that there's many ways to success, many different paths, And it's not just
Hmm.
books. I mean, it is. I mean, you want to study, but it's not just, your doctor, your lawyer, your engineer. There's many ways to be
Hmm.
successful, such as being an entrepreneur in the fitness space. So let's take it back from even like your childhood. What led you to where you are today?
So this story starts when I was really, really young, and I'll kind of tie it all together. But I was 12 years old, born and raised in Surrey, young kid. Long and the short of it is, I was raised by a single mom, and growing up, I had a lot of anger issues and aggression. Both my brother and I did. And my mom's kind of like Yoda when it comes to that, where she didn't really talk to us about that directly, but she knew she had to do something to kind of divert this energy. Otherwise, growing up in Surrey, things can go array really quick, especially for young boys. So she took me to a pawn shop, and in the pawn shop, she's thinking, okay, he's gonna find some sort of like, guitars, drum set, something like that. And there in the back was this bench press with this set of gold weights. There were 35-pound plates, and it caught my eye immediately. I was just drawn to it. I couldn't explain what it was, but I needed this thing in my life. So long and the short of it, my mom gets me the set of weights, and there started my journey of kind of what training means to me. And I was very green. I wasn't traditionally like, I didn't get a gym membership or any of that. I had the set of weights at home. So from there, I was exposed to bodybuilding magazines and bodybuilding.com, early days of the internet, and kind of just learned to work out on my own. And I was just always drawn to it. I don't know what it was. Like my brother and my cousins would be playing video games in the same room we had the weight set, but I would be working out. Just sometimes I would bench like 4 times, 5 times a week. And I didn't really know
Jeez.
what I was doing, but I just knew that like whatever this was, it really primally really resonated with me. And so from there, I kind of kept some sort of weight training in my life for my whole life through high school and all of that. And I got into university, and when I got enrolled into criminology. Now, I enrolled into university thinking I'm going to just do what everybody else is doing. This is just what I'm supposed to do. 3 semesters in, I'm on academic probation. It's just not for me. I'm skipping class. I'm not really committing myself. So one thing about my mom, she's like, okay, if you're going to do school, you're going to pay for it yourself. And I decided to drop out. And my mom, again, never really told me what to do in life. She just gave me options. She's like, okay, if you're going to drop out, you're going to have to get some sort of a job, and build some sort of a career, which is a heavy thing to kind of put onto an 18-year-old, right? Which in hindsight, I realize that now. But at the time, I was like, okay, so whatever, long and the short of it, I get a job at the bank. And from there, I was really good at it. Like I was really good at sales. I moved up really quick, and within a few years, I became a loans officer, and I started doing mortgages. And I'm sitting there in my office one day. This is probably like 4 years into me working at the bank, and I'm sitting at my desk, and I look over to the side. I see this older lady that's working next to me. I look to the other side. I see another old lady. I look across from me. I see an older brown guy that looks like me, but just, 15, 20 years into the future. And I had what I now realize was my first panic attack. And
Mm,
I sat
dang.
there, the walls started closing in on me. I broke out into sweats, and I realized that this is going to be the rest of my life. Across from me is an alcoholic. Next to me is someone that complains about her life all the time. And this is nothing against people that work a 9 to 5. Like, I mean, there's some people that are great at it, and they thrive in that environment. But I was a circle trying to fit into a square peg, and it just was not fitting. And the only way my mind and my spirit was communicating to me was through a panic attack. And I don't know what it was. And again, that early connection I made at 12 years old, same thing that happened in my office. I kind of snapped myself out of it, caught my breath, and immediately got onto Google and looked up personal training certification. And it was at that moment I realized that, hey, I had been ignoring this part of my life for so long. And that ignoring of it led me through this path of trying things, failing. And then even when I succeeded in finding a career, the spirit still wasn't sitting right. And that's what the panic attack was. So from there, I got my first personal training certification, and went through the whole gauntlet of getting the certification, going to school, and kind of wrapped all of that up. And then it was like, I remember the teacher telling us that if you're sitting in this class trying to get rich, this is not the career for you. You're in the wrong room. And she's like,
Interesting.
something like, the top 1% of personal trainers will make six figures or whatever it was. And I remember that kind of crushing me a little bit, because at that age, I mean, I cared a lot about money. I was very vain in that sense, right? Thinking that what's my get rich quick scheme, or not even get rich quick, but what's my get rich scheme, right? So whatever, I still was just ignored that and stuck to it, and from there I had to get really creative to get clients. Like, I remember one of my cousins kind of signed up with me, and she's like, "Listen, I want to support what you're doing, and kind of just test out your system, and let's just see what we can do," right? So I started training her at a local park, and from there I had to start getting creative, thinking I can't really sustain myself off of just one client. I started putting ads up on Craigslist. Meanwhile, still working at the bank, but I had a conversation with my manager, and we agreed that I would just go part time while I pursue this career that I want to kind of develop. So I post these ads on Craigslist, and I start getting some hits. I start making a Facebook page about myself and start getting some hits, and so then from there, I'm like driving around, going to Vancouver. So from Surrey to Vancouver, that's like a 40-minute drive. Driving out that way, wasting $15 in gas to make 20 bucks a session, and then realizing I have to drive back. So I'm actually spending money to train people,
Yeah.
but I had a soul on fire. I mean, I was more happy doing that than I was working at the bank. And then something always innate inside of me knew that this is the right path, even though every obstacle in the way was telling me, "Hey, you sure this is a good idea?" Like, there were so many speed bumps and walls that I had hit with, you know, in people's programming, hitting a progressive roadblock, because I can only take a kettlebell with me, and I can only take a bunch of stuff with me. So, all these things made me kind of hone in on my skills and work on the environment that I have with me. So I did that for a bit. And in the meantime, I had two other friends that were also personal trainers, and I realized that we can actually cover more ground if we just kind of come together as a conglomerate. So from there, I started kind of thinking, what's a good name for this organization? And I started realizing more that this was starting to become more of a movement, because early on our clients were young
Dope.
brown girls, and just even some of them were auntie. These were like what I would call outcasts in the gym, where they're not going to feel comfortable in a weight room training with a bunch of guys that are throwing 415, 445, 405 around on the deadlift, squatting, grunting, all that. They're not comfortable in that environment. So I started to realize that there's something happening here that I can really hone in on, and we can really service our community doing this. And that awakened something else inside of me, that service part, that seva, that I feel
Yeah.
like everyone in our culture and our religion, they have in the Sikh religion, that is to give back. And so from there, we started developing a program around the Indian woman. And what we found is they responded really well to movement-based training. So early on, our programming was all off of Mark Ripetell's Starting Strength. And his is a lot of just knee dominant, hip dominant, push, press, pull. And we found that that was very easy to program for people. And the women responded so well to it, because they didn't have what about arm day? What about chest day? What about, body specific movements? They were just like, "Listen, I know nothing here. I have no ego around this. Just please tell me what I should be doing and just coach me." And that really helped us develop our levels as a coach. And we started realizing that early on, that relationship is built off of trust. And to develop their trust took a little while, but once you got that trust with them, they were with you for a very long time. So long and the short of it is, like, I got tired of driving all the way around the lower mainland out here in BC. And so I set up my backyard. And in my backyard, I set up a squat rack, set up a bench press, and then we
Oh,
had a whole
dope.
gang of kettlebells. And I was like, okay, this is our first official facility. And during that time, I came up with the name Fit Nation, and it just all started to fit like a glove. We're servicing our community, our nation of people. Fit Nation is our name. We call our clients Citizens, and it was just all branding. Everything was starting to come together so organically, and I realized that I got out of my own way. Right, I started to, instead of swimming against the current, I was swimming with it, and with that, all this creativity was coming at me, and it was servicing me, and it was just the universe kind of saying, you have now found your purpose, you've developed your purpose, here's everything that's going to come along with it. And so we start training people in my backyard, and we hit our first in Vancouver. We're known for the rain, right? And out in BC, so we hit our first fall season, and we started losing a lot of clients. It was like, hey, you know what? We love to support you, but I'm not going to get wet at 6 in the morning training for a
Yeah.
squat. You know what? I'm just going to go back to the gym, and I'll come back to you once the weather gets better. And that was heartbreaking, right? We were like, damn, dude, like we worked this hard to get you to this level. Like, we want to keep this journey going. So necessity and adversity really forced us to kind of start driving around and find a location. And that early on, we didn't really know what we were doing. I couldn't tell you what a lease was or any of that. It was all super intimidating. But again, the soul was on fire. We had a necessity. I wasn't going to give up on the dream on this roadblock. I had already, developed that muscle of, you hit a roadblock, you hit a wall in the journey, you find a way to crawl through that thing, or you break through it. So we're driving around in my neighborhood, and we see this first for lease sign, and we just try and call the realtor up right away. And we try to act like we knew what we were doing. So I'm talking to Jim Gammer. I'll never forget him. He really entertained us for a bit, where he was listening to all these really dumb questions we had about, how old is the building? Is there asbestos? Like, what's triple net? All of this stuff, pretending like we knew what we were talking about. He stopped us halfway, and he's like, "This is the first time you guys are leasing something, eh?" And I'm like, you know what? I'm not even gonna lie to you. We are, and I just don't want to get took. I hear about horror stories around this stuff, and I just tried to,
Right.
sound smarter than I was. And he's like, "Listen, boys, what I'm gonna do for you guys? I'm retiring soon, and I'm just gonna take care of you guys. You got nothing to worry about. I'm gonna make sure you don't get screwed over. I'm going to help you. I know the owners. I'm going to walk you through what you need to negotiate in a lease and all of that." So he really helped us kind of negotiate a great lease, and on top of that, develop a great relationship with our landlords. And so from there, we're kids in a candy store. We have our first warehouse location, and it was about 2,000 square feet. And we get to just build this out. It's like a kid's dream. Like, it's our gym. There is no rules. Let's build it out the way we want to. So once the initial kind of joy wore off, and it was like, oh no, you have to develop a facility that essentially we thought at that point was going to be our forever home. What a daunting task. We have to cover all the bases. What do we look like in 5 years so we don't undershoot what our facility looks like today? We were just totally just shooting from the hip. But then we honed back in on like, okay, what are we? We're movement-based people. We are a strength training facility. So what does that look like? We don't need 100 machines all over the place. We just need a bunch of squat racks. We need a bunch of kettlebells. We need turf, and that's it. So from there, we developed our first facility, and that was the birthplace of Strong House. That was another name that I came up for our location. I figured Fit Nation is the brand. We need, for our location, it should be called something else so that people can separate the brand from what our training facility is.
Ooh,
And that's
I
where I
love
came
that.
up with the name Strong House. And so Strong House was first started at Unit 111. We're actually in a different location now. But from there, the community showed us so much love. Once we had our first location, we had women coming in, signing up weekly. Like, it was finally they had a place where they could work out, and they could call home. And we kind of started this little revolution with Indian ladies specifically in our neighborhood, and Surrey for that matter, of a place where we were known as a place where, hey, they play Punjabi music. They're a bunch of young brown guys that they kind of are like our sons, our nephews, but they're gonna teach us about health and fitness. But that also showed us this dark side of our community. You're raised by a single mom, so the women hold a lot of their inner angst inside. And one thing about training, you're an athlete, you know this. you can't hide anything from yourself when you're training hard,
Right.
and emotion comes out when you're training. And we started seeing a lot. I'm getting goosebumps talking about this. I mean, I remember the first lady that had like this. I mean, it wasn't a panic attack, but this outburst of emotion after we had taught her how to deadlift, and I think she was pulling like 165 pounds for five, and you know, back then we would kind of create a bit of an audience around someone doing a big lift, and she felt important and she felt like the center of attention. And meanwhile, going into a super hard deadlift, she finished the deadlift and burst out crying. And I'm not equipped to deal with this. I'm like, I remember seeing her just, I thought first, I'm like, okay, she's super happy that she hit this lift, but it became more than that. And she started to weep. And from there, I kind of gave her a moment and went to console her. And she could barely get the words out, but she had a lot of stuff going on at home, you know, abusive husband, son that's on the spectrum, and just like this, the weight of the world on her shoulders. And once she kind of composed herself, she's like, you know, I needed this, I needed that. And I don't want you to take my crying and my outburst in the wrong way. That was a release for me. I can't tell you how good I feel. And bro, Krish, there was light bulbs going off thinking,
Yeah.
this is the ultimate form of our training. You know, we're bringing these women in to lose weight and try to, you know, lose inches around the waist and fit the suit for their, you know, wedding that they're going to be going to or whatever. But this is the meat and the potatoes of it. You know, they're coming in to lose the weight, but they're fortifying their mind, they're forging their soul, and they're learning to deal with their issues through the greatest metaphor of all, which is the barbell or weight training or resistance training, whatever we want to call it these days. And that's where we started to really shift our way of thinking, because in our industry it's all about performance, weight loss, muscle gain, you know, six pack abs, having a great butt, nice legs, that type of stuff. And where I found this higher purpose of training, which is the caveat of working on your mental health, working on yourself. Because what I also started realizing is when people were coming in for weight loss, they would lose the weight and then they would stop training. And that was almost creating a negative pattern for them where they were only coming to the gym to lose the weight. And once they got the weight, they would stop. But if I had these people coming in for their mental health and as a healthy routine in their life, they're going to do it forever. Because I understand people aren't going to come and take in our service forever. I don't want that. What I want them to do is develop a set of skills and learn this journey of working out and training, and let that morph into whatever that becomes for them, so that they do it forever. And they'll do it if it's for their mental health. The weight will, you know, they'll lose the weight, but if you stop training and that anxiety comes back, if people feel like shit, they will do whatever it takes to not feel like that anymore. So if we can just kind of show them that training will help alleviate, if not at least expose the things you need to work on, it will keep them engaged in training and to work on their longevity. You know, the bone density will stay strong. Their brain and their soul will stay fortified so that when life hits them hard, they're already equipped with the skills to deal with it. And if not, at least they know they have something they can fall back on to clear the mind, clear the soul, and to tackle on whatever's going on with them. I know I'm rambling. I know I'm kind of might be
No,
all
it's
over the
great.
place right now. I have a bad habit of doing this, but that's kind of like been the journey of what the service has turned into, and honestly, what the meaning of training has turned into for me as well, right?
Love
Yeah.
everything you just spoke on, and I have several questions there we're gonna go. But while we're at it, how do you establish a training regimen as a lifestyle with your clients? It's one thing is, okay, come in, they lose the weight, and you said that once they get to the point, you'd see people dropping off on training, or it comes down to,
Mm-hmm.
hey, it's raining outside, and I don't need this anymore. But you see how impactful training can be, fitness and establish the
Mm-hmm.
just the natural endorphins that are released, how impactful it could be for like your mental health, your obviously your physical health, your confidence building, just everything, the support system. There's so much that we can go into. List out some of those things that you've seen, confidence building, support, all that stuff. But also, how do you establish that as a coach and a gym owner to make sure that people can leave your gym and that's okay, but you really care about
Hmm.
them implementing this as a lifestyle that they continue training for their own health, and that's ultimately going to make you happy and solve your needs.
Yeah, so I think like one of my mentors actually gave me the best advice ever, and he's like, you know what the greatest training program in the world is? And I'm like, what is that? And he's like, it's the one you can stick to. So we always play this game of comparison. And I get this with a lot of clients too, that, oh, I should be training this, and this. And if I'm not going, 5 rep maxes on my bench and my squat and my deadlift, I don't have an effective training protocol. But in reality, an accountant can't sustain that. They have a
Mm,
lot of stuff going on. So what I like to instill with everyone is like, listen, let's find the lowest effective dose for you. Number one, are you a professional athlete? Are you trying to be one? Are you a power lifter? Or are you trying to become one? Because if you are, that's a different discussion. But what are your goals? Your goal is to have a healthy regimen that you can stick to that empowers your mind, body, and spirit. It comes back to our mission. And now, if that's the case, for some people, that might be weight training twice a week and then making sure you do a daily walk after dinner to kind of reset, get your steps in, and make sure that the metabolism is speeding up and you're still doing all of that. And then we're working on your bone density. So we're working on longevity. What does your life look like in your 80s, when you're walking around playing with your grandkids and stuff? So it really comes down to just finding out at the crux of what is their goal. Let's get rid of the vanity. Let's get rid of the ego. Let's look at what is the actual goal that you have, and then how can we develop something that we can work on together. Now, high level skills like the kettlebell swing, the power clean, stuff like that, we can work on that. Let's make that 5% of our time. Let's make 95% of our time acquiring skills and then learning how I'm going to write this program for you, but I'm going to teach you how I wrote it and why I wrote it and why I go off of
right.
movement based stuff. Because if you're just reliant on me, I haven't done my job, because I know in 5 years I might not ever see you again. And I don't want to think that, hey, Jaskarn's sitting on his couch right now because he was so reliant on one of our employees, one of our coaches, for doing all the thinking and doing all of the, hey, do this, and this. Like, I don't want to be a babysitter. I want to be someone that's an educator. Right. And
Yeah.
so I'd like to educate all my clients on what is an effective program, and then kind of help them unlearn any of their preconceived notions they have around training, or that they have around, the comparison game and stuff like that. That's kind of what helps me keep them sustainable. And then as a coach, be malleable. People are going to walk in and they're not always going to have the best of days. So if you have a plan, um, be able to change and be malleable with that plan, because people are going to come in having rough days at the gym, or at work. Sorry, they're going to have a lot of, sometimes they're going to have mental health stuff. Like, I have a lot of students that come in during exam season. We are not doing the same training that we're doing when they're just in regular, just, or even in off season from school, have you, right? So just be malleable as a coach. And I teach my clients to be malleable with themselves, love themselves. Training shouldn't be a punishment that you give yourself, that I need to beat myself down and then I feel accomplished. It's like, no, you want to leave your training sessions feeling empowered. If I have you crawling out of the facility once you're done, that might make my ego feel good. That might make the client's ego feel good. But am I doing them a favor in terms of their mind, body, and spirit, and their longevity, and enhancing their performance? Absolutely not. And that's not the case, right? So unlearning that. And then I also like to use that as a relationship with the ego, because a lot of the times I have young kids come in and they don't have the healthiest relationship with their ego. I mean, what kid does, right? So I kind of get use that as an opportunity to educate them around the ego, how to make the ego their friend. The ego will have you reaching for the highest of goals and the highest of peaks, but the ego will also have you falling flat on your face from, trying to keep up with the Joneses, or thinking you're better than people. And so sometimes I have the best conversations after someone's hit 315 on the deadlift for the first time, and they think they're the man, and then they have to be told by Ben that this doesn't make you anything, my dude. This makes you strong. This does not make you better than the person that lifts 135. And that's a reality of life that
Love
you
that.
can use in money. You can use that in the car you drive, in the home you go to, in the clothes you wear. It's the same thing, right? So you better have a personality that goes with that deadlift, boy, because ain't
Yeah.
nobody gonna care about what you deadlift. You're not gonna be wearing that on your shirt when you're talking to that girl that you have a crush on. You better have a personality that goes with that strength, right? So that's kind of the way I like to attack it.
That covers a lot. Now, how do you tackle that in terms of ego? Because that's a really big one, especially you get teenage boys coming in. I know you have those in your community.
Mm-hmm.
You have two opposite sides of ego almost, and confidence. We'll put it as confidence. So, like you mentioned in the beginning, you have Indian women that are coming in, maybe your auntie that are coming in that have never been in the gym. They kind of feel like an outcast, so it's very confusing. There's a lot going on. They feel like they don't fit in, and you create a community for them to make them feel part of the community where they can grow. Then you have the complete opposite,
Mm-hmm.
where you have like these,
Mm-hmm.
teenage boys like we probably were, super confident. You
Mm-hmm.
did 315 deadlift. You're strong. I mean, I wasn't doing that
Mm-hmm.
when I was a teenage boy, but like, you're
Mm-hmm.
fit. You think you're hot stuff. You have complete
Mm-hmm.
opposite spectrums of two different confidence levels or egos, however you want to define it. But you have one community in Fit Nation.
Mm-hmm.
How does that
Mm-hmm.
all mesh together? How do you, as a leader of this, the coach there, the owner, how do you bring everyone together to make one community?
A lot of that comes down to the conversations we have about, or even just the kind of like the visual example we set where, say, there'll be an auntie doing a 65-pound RDL, right? Right next to an athlete that's doing that, 315 deadlift. I'm celebrating that auntie just as much, and giving that same enthusiasm to them that I am giving that kid, right? And so they see that, okay, that the weight on the bar doesn't matter. It's the fact that they're doing it is
Yeah.
what matters, and the coach is happy with the execution. That's what matters. And then when it comes with the kids specifically, I give them my example. I am very open with my, you know, um, my insecurities, and they look at me. They're like, first of all, you're covered in tattoos. You own a gym. You're living the dream. What do you have to be insecure about? And then I get to, like, talk to them about my battles with anxiety, what comes with running a business. It's not all just you make your own hours and you have all this fun. It's like, no, there's a lot of pressure and a lot of stuff, and like that you have to make sure that you're executing on every day. Otherwise, there is no Fit Nation. You know what I mean? And sometimes you're the guy cleaning the floors and making sure that the chalk is cleaned up around the stations. And sometimes you're the one that's going to the bank making the deposits. And sometimes you're the one that's stressing about having a slow month because clients are coming in like they used to, or COVID happens and stuff like that. There's a million and one anxieties that I have every single day. So don't let this shell think or fool you that I'm just I got all my stuff in order and I'm not anxious. Brother, I deal with anxiety every single day, and that's why I have to train. So I get to kind of make those connections for them and be vulnerable and show them that the guy that looks like should have the biggest ego and has it all figured out doesn't have it figured out. Deals with his battles every day, and how he deals with them is exactly the way what you're doing right now, training and making sure that the physical vehicle is exerted, is calloused, so that my mind can stay calloused to what life is going to hit me with, and then using that metaphor as much and as often as possible. Because I know my athletes, a lot of the athletes that come in here, listen, man, none of them are going to become professional athletes. They all think they are, but none of them are. But so, what my ultimate goal as an organization with my athletes becomes, develop life skills, develop the ways for training to become a metaphor for their life, so that when their heart eventually does get broken, they can take that same tenacity they put into training and that same tenacity they put into the pursuit of this sport into a career, into a life of service, into a pursuit of true freedom. Because those skills are transferable, but you just have to kind of make that connection for them. Because when a kid's heart breaks through whatever their pursuit is, and eventually it'll happen to all of us, it could go one of two ways, and one path is a lot darker than the other. right? And when you can make that connection for them, and honestly, there's nothing more rewarding seeing that connection being made in front of your eyes, and you see that kid that was the star basketball player now, going to a high level university and pursuing med school. Brother, there is like, you can write me a check for $1 million. That makes me feel as good as seeing this kid
Yeah.
that trained with me when he was 13 and now he's 23 last year, in sciences, and enrolled in med school and has a grip on their life. Like, holy smokes, what have we done? We've gone way past weight training and being a gym. We've become this place that's a catalyst for them to go and you know take this journey of life on with everything that they got. And so
What is that?
these stories are far and beyond.
Is that developing resilience in them from the gym? Is it adversity that they have to go through? Is it the consistency or the discipline? Like, what do you think really just being at a consistent gym that is an empowering,
Yeah,
supportive place like Fit Nation, like that you have built, but how do you take a kid from not going into trouble when, I mean, the opportunities are there, you know, like you can go
mm-hmm,
drink, you can go do drugs, you can go hang out with the wrong crowd, you can go
mm-hmm.
down that. Everybody has that opportunity, but how do you guide them to be successful in those careers? What are you building? Is it that resilience? What do you think that you're building that they're carrying over?
Yeah, I think we're right now, this might be a gross generalization, but life is easy. You know, we come home to warm houses, we come home to food on the table. Some of these kids, mom's taking care of laundry, dinner, lunch, breakfast, the works, money's in the account. They don't really have much to really worry about. So when it comes to life being that easy, or the time, easy times, they look for trouble because there's something innately in them that's a rebellious state.
Mm,
And that's number one. Number two, kids never want to be told that they're doing something wrong or what they should be doing. So ultimately, we have to rely on setting an example. So if we're blessed enough for them to walk in our doors, we slowly build that progressive overload into helping them do really hard stuff. Once they've done hard stuff and they are in a controlled environment for adversity, now they're not really, and I don't know what the connection is, but I find that the kid that's lifting heavy and or is in the pursuit of either sport, and so they come in for training to have a performance based goal, they always aren't going to drink. They're not going to really do drugs and kind of pop the pills or even vape because it's going to get in the way of training. So it kind
yeah.
of, they have a positive outlet that will, that the bad stuff will be a consequence to. So if they do this, it's going to affect this.
Yeah.
And if this is important, ain't nothing getting in the way of going in this. That is what I believe is a transferable correlation that they can use in real life. You know, standing up and preaching to kids never works. I've tried it and it only pushes them away. So when you bring them in and you build the trust with them through training as a coach, then you can use your life as an example for them. And I find using my life as an example for them, and the more of an open book I was with them, whether it was through my podcast that I used to have or the conversations that I have one on one with these kids, and the more I share my story online, I find that that level of trust goes up and they're able to kind of, you know, be more vulnerable with me and share their story with me. And it takes time. And, I've had some kids share some super dark stuff that I'm not qualified to deal with. And they've been referred out to therapists and counselors, and now they're thriving. I've had kids that, in their early 20s doing speed meth, super dark stuff to themselves that on the surface, bro, I would never know until they come and sit down and talk to me about this is what's going on in my life. And it's just like, you have the greatest poker face in the world because I never would have thought this was going on.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing with me. Let's find you the help. And then, not making any promises you cannot deliver on. There is nothing more dangerous than letting a kid down, bro. And I see it all the
Mm,
time with other leaders in the community where they overpromise and they're not able to follow through on their promises of being there for these kids. And that shatters a kid's, because they have a small narrow look on what the world is. And when you break their heart early on from a trusted source, oh man, there's almost impossible to come back from that. So I take those commitments very seriously. And so you have to be there for these kids. And if they are willing to open up to you, understand what a treasure that is, what a rarity that is. And if that does happen, be there for them in a non-judgmental way. They're going to tell you some crazy stuff. And the last thing you want to do is be like, damn, you did that?
yeah,
No, man. It's like, hey, I understand. I'm not here to judge you. I have my demons. I've done my stuff in the past, and I can relate, maybe not directly, but I get it. And
yeah,
and if you can kind of just be there to say that more than do this, stop doing that, you'll make a way better connection with them, and you'll actually make real progress with these kids. And understand sometimes progress moves just like in a gym at a snail's pace. Real progress is slow, stacked on top of each other
yeah.
until you get to a point where you don't even realize you've become the person you want to become, because it happens so slowly that it takes time to reflect, to understand, wow, I did it, right? And that's why I try and relate or relay to all my people, whether it's through training or life or whatever it is, that, hey man, it's a journey. There is no end destination here. The end destination is that reel that's going to play in front of your eyes before you die. Let's call that the journey, the destination. Until then, let's live a life of just, of discovery, of risk, of, constantly getting better and changing. A lot of the conversations I have these days is like, kids are too scared to change because they're afraid to change. And it's like, what a sad and tragic life to live if you're just going to stay the same your whole life. You're going to just have the
Mm,
same, issues that you have with yourself, or this, you don't want to level up and find out what is it that makes me uncomfortable and run towards that, rather than staying in that comfortable safe place that you've kind of called home. um, and I find that pursuit helps kids take off on their own journey, because just like fitness, it's different for everybody, right?
right.
Some of the hardest stuff for some people are the easiest for others, right? So just understanding that it's different, it looks different for everyone, and some people's battles, no matter how small they might look in comparison to others, it's their own battles, right? And you have to respect that.
I love that, man. I mean, there's so much to say with just being a role model and a leader, right? You have the platform to do it with Fit Nation. People come into the gym, they already automatically see that, but it's not just about what you say. It's saying how you do it, how you're leading, how you're listening, how you're respecting them, and how you can guide them and
Mm-hmm.
point them to where they need to be. And one thing with you is you're more than just a coach and a mentor, but you actually walk the walk as well. And you're building yourself
Mm-hmm.
as an athlete here. And I want to touch on that. So, we've covered a lot on Fit Nation, what it's like coaching, what it's like from, being a leader in your community, from Indian women to younger teenage boys, figuring things out and how you can guide them and align them to a successful stack over stack over stack, fitness journey to get to their ultimate goals. What about you as an athlete? What's going on right now? I
Mm-hmm.
know you're running, you're a distance runner. You have to walk the walk. You can say everything you want. I don't care about that if you
Hell
don't
yeah.
actually do it, right? Let's do it. Like
Straight
why
up.
why do we need
Yes
to listen
sir.
to you? And like you're actually walking it. And so you got some cool things going on. Let's talk about the athlete life or what's going on with the running, and then
Mm-hmm.
we'll go into like your training and what that actually looks like, if someone wants to
Absolutely.
start an athletic career just like how you did.
Yeah. So let's go back a little bit. So I was never an athlete growing up. I actually played no sports. I mean, mom was already spread thin with all of the commitments with work and raising three kids, that playing organized sport was out of the question. So I've never been an athlete. So even for you to say that to me, it's kind of weird for me, thinking that shit, maybe you are an athlete. Like, this is wild, right? But my running journey, I used to be the guy that made fun of runners because I come from that, weightlifting background. And even with Mark Rippetoe, anybody that knows Mark Rippetoe, um, he thinks we're running's a waste of time. So we really subscribe to that. And so when COVID hit, they shut our gyms down out here, just like they did. We're almost everywhere in North
Everywhere,
America.
yeah.
And I remember I would still drive down to Fit Nation and kind of pop in to do my workouts. And I remember sitting here one day feeling super guilty, thinking, man, the tribe can't work out. This doesn't feel right. And at the same time, one of my friends at the time was running. He was a runner, and he would just always jab at me like, "Yo, man, just start running. You know, you're eventually going to start doing it. You're not going to be able to escape it. Just do it." And then so when COVID happened, it was like the perfect storm. And so I was not able to do, I think, 10 minutes consecutive without stopping, huffing, puffing, and just dying. I remember trying to do my first 5K around the neighborhood was just the hardest thing in the world.
Yeah.
And I loved it. Again, that battle, like, you telling me you can't do this? Oh boy, let's change some minds. Like that's one thing about me. Reverse psychology on me works really, really well. Like if you tell me I can't do something, I'm gonna find a way to do it. And that's what running was to me. It was like it met me at a crossroads in my life where I needed a new challenge fitness wise, and I needed almost a new identity when it came to training because I had sustained some energy or injuries, weightlifting. I, had a bulging disc from deadlifting and squatting more than I should have, and not recovering properly, and just some lifestyle stuff that I just was not copacetic with me. So running finds me, and I get bit by the bug, and I'm 30 years old. Now, growing up, I'm thinking when you see a 30-year-old and you're young, you're like, oh man, that's it
Yeah.
for life. You're an old guy
Ancient.
now, you know
Yeah.
what I mean? Ancient, right? And so at 30, I pick up running and I start over the course of a year, I get really good at it. And I just stay consistent. That's one thing about what people don't realize about running. Everyone can run. I hate it when people say, I can't run. If you have two legs, you can run. I know some people with not even two legs that are still runners. Like it's innately in us. And you can so easily, if you just consistently get out of your own way and do the work, you can progress in running so easily. And I've learned that firsthand. So I ran my first half marathon, I think within a year of starting running, and I was, I think, 31 years old. And it was the hardest thing I had ever done in my life. I remember finishing that race thinking, oh, I'm looking forward to never running again. And 2 weeks
Yeah.
later, I was back on the road, and now we were training for a marathon, right? So this relationship I have with adversity and finding things that are super tough um, has served me so well because the greatest gift I've ever had for my mental health is through running. I've had
Mm.
some of my greatest conversations through running. I've laughed on a run. I've cried on a run. I've been angry at myself on a run. I've overcome my anxiety on a run. Same with my depression on a run. Like there's a lot of stuff that I've used running as medication for. But the greatest gift it gave me is like what you said, it made turn me into an athlete. It now took away, like, I've been married now for 7 years, but I've been with my wife for 20 years this year. We were high school sweethearts. So she
Awesome.
doesn't care what I look like. So I'm not looking good for anyone, right? Like even for me, like the vanity part of working out's kind of gone out the window. Like, yeah, sure, I still want to still look fit, but really it's not a priority like it used to be when I was young. And, having nice arms and having a big back and a big chest was important. It's just not important anymore. So running really gave me a performance-based goal that's kept me engaged with training more. Like it wasn't so much about like if I was still working out just to look good, that would have been out the window. I'd be that fat gym owner that didn't really care, right? So now I'm on this pursuit. So I had a lifetime goal when I first started running, I heard about this thing. It was the sub 3 hour marathon and how difficult it was. Like,
Mm.
I think it's less than 1% of the world will run a marathon, or run 1% of men in the world will run a marathon, and less than 1% of them will do a sub 3 hour marathon.
Wow.
And again, that
Mhm.
crazy living in my head thought, I'd like to be a part of that 1%, but better yet, I'd like to be a part of that 1% of 1%. And so I would go to sleep thinking about a sub 3 hour marathon, wake up thinking about it. And everything in my life and training revolved around this sub 3 hour marathon. And so I ran my first marathon, I think 2 or 3 years ago now, 2 years ago, and I ran it in 3 hours and 25 minutes. And the training that led into that was some of the hardest stuff I'd ever done in my life. I was at a body weight that was lighter than when I weighed in high school. I was I also have a torn ACL, so I was also told that running's going to be out of the
Mm.
question for you. It's going to be super difficult for you. I had trained through this injury without really any type of issues, and I was able to go on these 2.5 hour runs and still have an engine going that was just still unstoppable. And I would think back to just 2 years before where I couldn't even do that 10-minute run and thinking, how amazing is this vehicle of mine that I
Oh yeah.
can totally flip my life over in this old guy phase and become this athlete. And so I thought, okay, you've been a coach for how many years? You've never had a coach. So
Yep.
then I hired a running coach, and with Ron, my running coach, we started pursuing this sub 3 hour marathon. And for 7 months, I worked day in, day out with this coach, hitting every single workout, running through a flu, running through a cold, running through Achilles issues, and really hammering out my rehab, and got to be on the other side of that relationship of athlete and coach, and learned so much more. And it made me so much better as a coach because I was able to empathize with the athlete more, where I was getting these orders of the day of like, this is the workout, and thinking, damn, how am I even going to be able to get through this? Like, I'm hurting right now. But this thing with running, man, no matter how crappy you feel, once the wheels start moving, the animal inside of you takes over, and it's like an engine, man. One of my favorite quotes in the world comes from my Coach Ron, and he said, "We're gonna build an engine so strong that it's impossible to fail." And I feel like we finally got to that point
Mm.
when it came to I ran the California International Marathon. This was the marathon where, hey, we're going to do a sub 3 hour marathon. And he had it loaded in my app that I have on my watch. The time was 2:59:59. That was the time to beat on my watch for the marathon. And so I go through the 7 months of training block, train through injuries, and I'm really focused. And the day of the race, I'm nervous. I got the jitters. Like, it's just, you flew all the way to California to get this thing done. Like, there's a lot of stuff riding. And then ultimately, you know, what if you don't do it? You're going to look like a
Yeah.
failure. And that voice in the back of your head just really got to be in the athlete's feet, right? And it made me empathize with what they're thinking. Like, I don't want to let my coach down. My clients and my athletes are thinking that too, right? So I'm trying to just really get through all of that. And again, I start hitting that race, and the engine takes over. And brother, when I tell you, like, I don't want to say that it was like the most easiest thing in the world, but it was not as hard as I thought it was going to be. And
You're well
so I'm
trained.
getting to the last. I was trained to the T because I hired a coach. I was on the other side of that, and I listened to the body, and I really got out of my own way, regardless of how anxious I was. And I get to the last three miles, and I'm starting to hurt. Now the real race has started, right? They say the thing they say about marathons is it's a 30-kilometer training run with a 10-kilometer race at the end. The real race starts at the last 10 kilometers. So my,
Mm.
my coach had walked me through, we had gone through the whole route, and he said, okay, at this point, you're going to feel some sort of a wall hitting. You got to just win the small wins, win the small battles, and you got this race in the bag, right? And so I I start hitting it, and I'm like, okay, I'm not hitting these walls. I'm feeling good. I'm feeling good. And then the last 3 kilometers hit me, and I'm like, it's your race to win. Like, you have it in the bag, but your legs are feeling heavy. Hamstrings are starting to cramp up. I got this real crazy kink in my neck, and my arm carriage is not doing that well. And I just like, if you're gonna blow a gasket, blow a gasket. Let's see what you're made out of. You talk all this talk. Now, let's
Yeah.
stack this undeniable proof. And I got through that last 3 kilometers. I look up at the time as I'm getting to the finish line, and it says 2:57. And oh man, it was like 10 years of, you know, all the stuff that I was holding deep down inside
Yeah.
of Pandora's box in the pit of my stomach all came out. And I was valid. I was worth it. I was I was him, man. I was the person that I made myself out to be. I stacked enough undeniable proof that, I could say to myself, you are him now. And I had never felt that before. I had never, played on a team sport. I had never won this game that was going to make me feel
Yeah.
this feeling. And to feel that at 35, oh man, like it gave me a new outlook on life, thinking that, age is what we put on ourselves. Like there is no reason for us to think that we can't do anything at any time. And, feeling that feeling was, it gave me a new, like, a new sense of youth. And,
Yeah.
now that again, valleys and peaks, right? These goals are valleys and peaks. And I was at that sub 3 hour marathon was actually to qualify for Boston, because my ultimate goal was to do the world majors. Now the world majors are Boston, New York, London, Chicago, Tokyo. I have them written down on my board here, and Berlin. So
Still.
the lifetime goal was to do a sub 3 hour marathon, but the goal above the goal, so that I stay engaged well into my 40s, was to do these 5 world majors, which all you need to qualify for all of them. So I qualified for Boston at that race as well, and I again, entered into smaller company, which is the 1% of the 1% that
Right.
qualify for Boston, and now I can start my journey of the world majors. Now I want to talk about delayed gratification a little bit, because I qualified for Boston, but I don't get to run Boston until 2025. So now I
Hmm.
have to spend all of 2024 staying healthy, working on all the little things in training to stay focused for the start of the bigger goal, that is to run the world majors that starts in 2025. So I want to touch on how important it is to set not these just short-term goals, but these grandiose goals that spread over time, so that
Yeah.
they force you to stay disciplined over time and force you to work towards something that's so much bigger than yourself, um, so that you have to rise to the occasion every time, and so that you have something that you are working on that's bigger than yourself. So these little things that ease brings, that the comfort brings, those problems and issues that you start to find because of the easy life, don't have time. You can't even entertain them, because you're working on something. Every week, I have a training block that I'm working through, for the next week, and I'm stacking every single workout on top of each other for 365 plus days, so that I can start my journey of the world majors, and that's going to keep me engaged for the next at least 5 years, I would say. And then from there, who knows what that turns into? A race on every continent, running through the
That's
pyramids,
awesome. That's so
holding the
sick.
first marathon in Surrey. What that turns into. I'm just setting myself up so that I can create grander goals on top of the grand goals I've set. And when my time comes, I'm just trying to have one hell of a movie to watch on my deathbed. And this is just one of the reels in the film, I'd say. Not to get too
Yeah.
philosophical, but that's
Yeah,
kind of where it's
that's
headed.
it's so cool. It's so cool because you started from just barely running around your neighborhood to now
Hmm.
going, training for the Boston Marathon. And just for perspective, a sub 3 hour marathon is it's 26.1 miles, I believe. It's
Hmm.
650, about a 650 mile pace over 26 for 3 hours. It's not
Yeah, yeah.
this is literally
It's
the
nuts,
top
man.
1% of the 1%. That it's
Hmm.
wild. I mean, I can't. 650 is probably like I don't know. I actually don't even know, um,
You'd be surprised.
but
You'd surprise yourself, Chris. You're a beast,
y-
brother. Like,
yeah, I mean,
yeah, if running's important to anybody out there and anyone that's listening thinking they can't run, stick to it. Start off super small. Go 2-minute jogs, 1 minute walk, 2-minute jogs, 1 minute walk, and give yourself 4 to 6 weeks and watch your body transform in front of you.
Yeah.
Watch your capacity to do hard things increase. And that's so transferable in different parts of life. It's insane, man. It's made what normal stuff that would just really mess me up over time, it's made that a lot easier for me. Um, just because I've calloused my mind through, you
Mm.
know, 3 hour training blocks of I'm out there on a trail in Surrey somewhere running for 2.5 hours non-stop without a break. Once you do that, I mean, the hardest things in life, you kind of can dig deep into the trenches of your spirit to overcome, right? Whether that's loss, whether that's adversity you feel through business or anything like that, regular stuff that would give me anxiety, I have now trained myself in different forms of adversity to be equipped to deal with these things so that I can be that better husband, I can be a better son, I can be a better coach and leader for my team and leader for the tribe here at the nation.
Yeah, I mean, it's so difficult to see the ultimate vision. I mean, it's easier to see the ultimate vision, right? I want to run these
Mm-hmm.
marathons. I want to build Fit Nation into this is what it can be. But it's so difficult to actually start it and to continue doing it when you have your obstacles. Whether you're doing Fit Nation, you have obstacles. Well, now we got to get a lease, or we're losing clients because of the weather.
Mm-hmm.
Now we got to find a space. Like you don't really know what you're learning on the fly. You're giving up a good paying job and a career because you're taking a gamble on yourself. And hey, it pays
Mm-hmm.
off now when you look back at it. But then even as an athlete, all right, you're going to run, you're going to train for a marathon. Cool. Looks great on paper. You get a coach, you just run, you follow the thing and do that for, 7 months to a year. Oh, wait, you have some Achilles
Mm-hmm.
injury. Wait, that wasn't part of the plan, or some knee injuries or
No.
anything going down.
Mm-hmm.
You got the flu. Tell me about going through obstacles, whether it was in your business or your athletic career, and why it's important just to keep going. That staying like into the storm, or like when you're going through hell,
Mm-hmm.
keep going. And I want
Mm-hmm.
I want to wrap up with that, and just any that mindset of going through obstacles, which you've touched on, and then any last words that you have.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll kind of button all that up with it's kind of like a reality for I think it's bison or buffalo. I forget which one it is. But so when a storm comes, cows and buffalo both understand that a storm is coming, and they see it, they sense it. And what cows start to do is cows start to go away from the storm. So if the storm's coming this way, they try to run away from the storm.
Hmm.
What bison do is they run towards the storm. Now,
Mm-hmm.
ultimately, that cow, as they're running, they're going to slow down, they're going to get tired. That storm's going to catch up, and now they're in the storm for longer than they need to be. The
Yeah.
bison go towards the storm. They keep gaining momentum. They're in the storm for a much shorter period of time than the cow because they're going to run through the storm and ultimately get to greener pastures.
Yeah.
So are obstacles. What's undefeated in this world, in this life, is time. Time isn't an excuse that we use to just, oh, life's getting tough. I'm just going to kick back and just let time take over here. It's like, no, 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 no. Time's a running. It's running. It's nonstop. It's not going to care whether you've gone through tragic loss, business failures, or anything like that. Time does not have biases. It doesn't pick sides. It just keeps going. So if we use time as the storm, let's go in through time. Let's go through it rather than running away from it every single time, thinking, oh, I'm just not going to deal with my stuff. Oh, I got this going on in my business. I'm just going to ignore it. Well, eventually time's going to catch up with us and our obstacles are going to catch up with us. But if we go towards them, we'll spend a shorter period of time in that adversity. And also, when we go through these obstacles, we extrapolate lessons. Everything is giving us data. Everything is
Yeah.
giving us lessons to make us better at other things. Now, we acquire through this life, we acquire these tools and these skills that life teaches us that we don't always use, but we need to keep in the tool belt because eventually something's going to happen where we're going to be like, oh, I've already dealt with something like this. I know how
Yeah.
to roll with these
Resilience.
punches instead
Mm-hmm.
of just being, surprised by everything in life. you can just smile at it and be like, oh, okay, that's how you want to play this? Let's dance. And that's kind of like the mindset that I take. Like, I almost, I don't want to say I get excited when things go off, but I kind of take a deep breath and I immediately start searching the lessons. Like, okay, first, we got to deal, right? Let's deal. We've been through worse, and we'll probably go through worse later on, but right now, let's say this is the hardest thing that's happened to me in my life. Well, it's just the hardest thing that's happened to me in my life. And I'm here. I'm alive. I'm still
Yeah.
good. I'm breathing. I like to practice gratitude right away, thinking, okay, I have a family that loves me. I have a wife that loves me. I have food at home, and I can go home to a warm house. Everything else is bonus above that. Let's make that clear. Okay. So now we can be grateful for that. So now this can't be that big. That can't be that bad. So it kind of scales us down to what the obstacle is. Then start picking away at it. And oftentimes it's the stuff that you're ignoring, stuff that you don't want to kind of face head on, right? Whether that's grieving, whether that's giving up that personality issue that is irking you because you're moving with jealousy and you don't want to give up that ego of yours. And sometimes, a lot of the times, it's just the ego that is facing the obstacle, right? And if we start looking at everything with a lens of what's the lesson and be the bison going through the storm rather than running away from the storm, I feel like we'll be in greener pastures before we know it.
Yeah, into the storm. Just fight it on
Yeah.
straight head on. It's hard.
Hmm.
I mean, it's definitely not easy. No one wants to go through it, but the lessons you
Yeah.
learn, the resilience that you have to build, the adversity, like you're saying, it's the hardest problem you have in your life at that time. Something else will come,
Hmm.
and I always like
Hmm.
to say it's like, you're as you get older, your highs get higher, your lows get lower, right? When you're a little
Hmm.
kid, your thing you're most excited about is like what your Christmas present's going to be. You have a little
Yeah.
birthday pizza party, and
Yeah.
your low is like you didn't get your Christmas present, or
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
not there. But then you as you get into like high school or middle school, you have your first love, you start dating
Hmm.
someone, then you have your first
Hmm.
heartbreak, right? And like
Hmm.
the world is ending. And then you get older and then you start seeing like family members pass away. But you also
Yeah.
start going to like weddings and you start saying, wow, like you get married yourself or you graduate school and then you like have like I don't know who's maybe he's divorced or like just all these flips of like highs and lows and highs and lows. And then you
Hmm.
start maybe you have kids and you have like that and you have accomplishments. All
Yeah.
that stuff continues the highs and the lows. And it's the adversity, the things that you go through, these obstacles, and it all starts back with like how do you live with yourself, and that can
Yeah.
be in health and fitness, what you're taking care of your
Hmm.
body, those challenges you're putting in. Man, you've covered so much and shared your journey with us. Where can people find you? Yeah, where can people
Yeah,
find you?
absolutely. So on Instagram, it's at FitNationBen. FitNation's Instagram is at FitNationBC. You can find us on there, and I'm an open book. I mean, if anyone's going through it, or anybody just wants to bounce off ideas, or just talk about, or wants to go deeper into the stuff that we talked about here, just DM me, DM FitNationBC, DM FitNationBen. And I'd love to dig deeper in, and I get a lot out of these as much as people get out of it as well. And I really look forward to seeing your journey as well, Krish. I mean, like a lot of the stuff that you're doing and a lot of stuff that we were talking behind the scenes. You're a man on a mission, man, and I'm honored and blessed to be included in this journey that you're on as well. And I can't wait to kind of expand on our relationship and where we're headed and what we can do for the community going forward, man. This is going to be an
Yeah, man.
amazing time for us.
Yeah, I appreciate it and I appreciate you. I mean, I got to get my butt over to Vancouver in that area. I hope we get a
Yeah, man.
workout in. But man, thank you, man. It's been a
No problem.
pleasure, and I know people are gonna love this one.
Pleasure's all mine. Appreciate it, my brother. Thank you so much. You have a good one.